Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, doctors and professors, Rugby World Cup champions, and hopefully Cricket World Cup champions pretty soon. Welcome to the South African Association of Pediatric Dentistry webinar and in collaboration with South African Dental Association. I am Dr. Gobisa Gade, the Eastern Cape branch manager of the SAAPD. Thank you to SADA for the partnership and also the amazing SAAPD team and our guest speaker for tonight, Dr. Rutendo Kudenga. So before I introduce Dr. Kudenga, I just want to share some house rules. Everyone knows where your bathrooms are, so that rule is sorted. Also, please refrain from using the raised hand, but type your comments and questions in the Q&A tab, and we will have a Q&A section at the end of the lecture. CPD certificates will be uploaded to the HPCSA platform, and you will be able to access all your certificates under your member profile. Tonight's event qualifies for one clinical CEU. And remember to complete the evaluation after the webinar. We will also share an SAAPD info page and a link to register to become part of this amazing team. And also during Dr. Kudenga's lecture, we will have a poll and we will all have time to answer on the screen. So you will be answering either yes or no. So let's jump straight to our speaker for today. Dr. Kudenga is originally from Zimbabwe and qualified as a dentist in 2015 at the University of Pretoria. She did her community service in Springbok and thereafter worked in the private sector for 6 years. In 2021, she joined the Department of Odontology at the University of Pretoria as a full-time lecturer. Dr. Kudenga has a postgraduate diploma in endodontics from the University of Pretoria and a master's in global public health from the Queen Mary University of London. She is passionate about implementing change in the public health system to ensure health equity and with interest in prevention and health policy. Let us all welcome Dr. Kudenga, who will be speaking about kids and vaping and understanding the impact. Over to you, Doctor.
Hey, thank you so much, Kate. And firstly, before I share my presentation, thank you so much to SAAPD and to SADA for providing the platform. I truly, truly appreciate it, and it is truly an honor. Okay, so my topic, as you heard, is kids and vaping and understanding the impact of it. Okay, so we're going to start off with an overview of what I'm going to discuss. We're going to first discuss the e-cigarette marketing, how they're marketing at the moment, what platforms they're using as well. I'm going to discuss the devices on the market, how much they cost, and where you can actually buy these devices. We're going to go through the impact it has on kids and how it's affected the kids at the moment, and the risks that come with using vaping, with taking any e-cigarette, the risks that come with using it on your health, on your oral health. And then we're going to go through the role of oral health professionals, okay, where we come into all this that is going on in our world today as we speak. Okay, so the next video I'm going to play is of an advert of a vaping brand called Juul that was first launched in 2015 in the United States. Okay, so they first came out as flashy. They were the first ones to come out with colorful ads with young people in their ads, and this is what they showed. Okay, so interestingly enough, Juul was the brand that bought ad space on your Cartoon Network, on Nickelodeon, on your educational website. So your any math learning website that was online, they put ads, and that's what they showed. They showed any place they could get the youth, they showed ads on to market their devices, even gave away free devices to kids. That's how bad what Juul was before they brought it down in 2015. So over the past decade, what we've seen is that they've started marketing on social media. Okay, they've got a lot of pages on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube. Okay, they will advertise anywhere that they can find. Okay, and they have vaping influencers, people that they pay to market their devices. Okay, which is something that studies have shown that these social medias have policies on advertising. So their policy is that you are not allowed to advertise any smoking device with an intention to sell. But this policy only applies to paid ads. So they won't pay you if you have an ad like that. But they have no control over what a normal person posts due to free speech. So anyone can post anything at any time to do with vaping. So there was a study done in the UK in 2021 between June and August. So what they did is that they went onto YouTube and they went onto Instagram, and they looked for posts that were related to vaping and e-cigarettes. And what they actually discovered is that there were only about 100 of the posts on Instagram and 92 of the videos on YouTube were applicable to the study. And what they discovered was that vaping was portrayed as being positive in 86% of the posts on Instagram and 64% of the videos on YouTube. And to make matters worse, 43% of the YouTube videos and 20% of the Instagram ones did not have any warnings on them of age restrictions or health effects. So people were going on and posting whatever they desired and bombarding any kid they could find, because the reality is that kids spend most of their time on social media. It's estimated that they can spend more than 3 hours of the day on social media viewing these things, and this is what they see. You can eat why eat it when you can vape it? These are the adverts that they see. They see young people vaping, they see the smoke, they see the color. It looks enticing, and it's on every social media page. You have trends that go on, like people vaping in their wedding photography. So this shows us that it looks like it's the norm. It looks like it's safe because everywhere you look, people are vaping. And on social media, people are vaping. It's the cool thing to do. And this is what kids are being exposed to. There's even influencers. Like this guy at the bottom has 1.8 billion followers that follow him because he does vape tricks. And this is what people look for. This is what the kids are viewing on social media. Then we have the videos. Okay, the tricks videos. You can do any trick with a vape, and this is what kids are attracted to. If you put in a hashtag handle on TikTok, I mean, hashtag vape has 18.8 billion views. Hashtag vapor has 1.9 billion views. Hashtag vape tricks has 1.6 billion views. So this is what people are focused on. These are one of the biggest trends on TikTok at the moment is vaping. So the promotion of e-cigarettes, what we realize is that it actually increases a positive perception among kids. Because if you walk into a mall, there's a Vuse stand in every single mall. There's some stand or either a stand or a shop that's selling electronic cigarettes. And that stand is the most colorful one. It's the brightest one, and it attracts you because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to attract due to their colors, due to their flavors. And that was their marketing strategy. We need to sell the flavors because that's what makes it different from a normal cigarette. Okay, and when they advertise, they make health claims by saying it's much safer, which gives us the perception that, okay, it's okay for me to vape. It's okay for me to push this type of lifestyle because everyone else is doing it. And then they even go on and pay social influencers. I mean, if you search on the internet, you can find a company that is actually advertising and looking for people to pay and to advertise their products on social media, because they know that at least their products will go out, and because if they advertise themselves, they're not allowed to, their products will be banned. So this is a kid on TikTok.
Up here, my vape. Oh my god, I hate when ones out for the day. Is the little sliders on. It's time to break. Go down the stairs. So I'd say for my fridge, I'm not sure what flavor I'm going for. Yeah, I just love that morning hit, man. Wow. Then what I like to do is do a bit of journaling to clear my mind. Once I've done that, I just head downstairs. It's time for lunch. And for lunch, I decided to go for passion. Oh, wow. That's really refreshing. Really, wow.
So yes, these are the type of videos that are on TikTok. Interesting enough, this video actually got banned. This guy had to take down this video because they discovered they actually said he's promoting vaping to kids. So they had to ban this video from TikTok, and he had to take it down. It was all over the news that he was promoting vaping for eating, and this is what the kids were watching. So the devices on the market, there is hundreds of thousands of devices, hundreds upon hundreds. If you think of a shape, they probably have it in a vape. That if you think of a color, they probably have it in a vape. So they're cool, they're sleek, you can hide them almost anywhere, they're colorful, and they're easy to hide. Okay, so what they realized is that kids were now putting vapes in pencil case, because as you can see, that actually looks like a highlighter. You would never know it's a vape. Some actually stick them in Sharpies, so you don't notice, so they can vape anywhere. And these are the things they were discovering in schools and what was going on. And some actually look like USBs. If you don't know what you're looking for, you will never know that that is a vape device. And that's what makes them attractive, that kids can get away with the vape. And I think to make it worse is that they smell nice. You never think that something so harmful could smell nice. Like if you think of ice cream or you think of toffee, you'd never think that as you smell it, you'd never actually think that, nah, this can't do anything to me. And that's what's going on. The perception that our kids have towards it is that, how can something so sweet be so harmful? How can something that looks cool, that looks like a water vapor? Because there was a study that was actually done in the United States, and they figured out that majority of the students, these were teens, 11 to 17 years old, actually thought that the smoke that they see is water vapor. That's what they thought it was. To them, it's harmless. So it can't be like the cigarette that we were told so much about, that it causes cancer, that smells terrible. It cannot be the same thing with the vape. So the types of devices on the market, you have disposable. So these are the devices that they have a number of puffs in them. So it ranges between 500, 1,000 to 6,000 puffs, and they are sold everywhere. I mean, Take a Lot, if you think of a brand, Take a Lot has it. If you find a brand on TikTok, you can probably find it on Take a Lot. So the cheap, they range between 80 and 100, depending on the flavor, depending on a special. Sometimes if there's a special, it can be 60 Rand. So as you can see, these things are affordable for kids to use. And then you also have the pods, the refillable kits. So these are the devices that you buy the vape pen itself, and then you continuously keep adding with the different flavors. So if you think you want strawberry, you go buy the e-liquid or the liquid pod, as they call them, and you put it in. These are rechargeable, and as you can see, as they are non-disposable, they get high in price, but they are some that go on sale for 100 Rand. That is possible. So these things are very affordable. And then the e-liquid, to replace one canister, you're looking at about 100 to 150 Rand for 2 liquids. Okay. So depending on how often you vape is how often you replace this liquid. So the impact, this has taken the world by storm. They discovered in America that over 2.5 million kids are vaping. This was a study that was released in 2022. So it'll be interesting to see as well as we go on how many kids are vaping. They discovered that 1 in 9 children in Great Britain are starting to vape. And just to add on to this, what Britain did the first time the vape came out was that they really believed that this was the life-saving to cigarettes, and they added it to their public health campaigns. So they have campaigns on getting pregnant women off cigarettes and putting them on vaping. They provide vapes for people who are trying to quit. So they really jumped on the wagon on this, but they did not take into consideration the fact that their kids would be affected. And then in Canada, you have 1 in 4 teens that are vaping. And then in South Africa, you have 1 in 5 matriculants that are vaping. So Prof. Van Zyl carried out a study in 3 provinces. So what he did is that he sent out a survey to the high-income high schools. Okay, so he had about 7,000 participants in there. And what they discovered was that majority of the matriculants were vaping, and that was because of stress. It was stress, it was anxiety, it was their way of releasing their stress was vaping. And they thought it looked cool, they wanted something new, and this is what's going on right at our doorsteps, okay? And this is not even published yet. He has not released any published results, but he has mentioned that this is a pilot study and this is what they have found, okay? So the reasons for use, the flavors, the discreetness, the easy access. I was shocked the other day when I walked into Checkers, and I actually saw that they sell the vape liquid, and it really caught me off guard because you'd never think that something that has a bill that we're fighting against would sell in Checkers, you know, especially now that everyone's kind of realizing that we have a problem. So there's an easy access. As much as they like to say that, no, we have age gates on our website, I just have to press, yes, I'm over 18 and I'm in. I mean, Take A Lot doesn't even give you that option. You just press, pay for it, and get it delivered. And then that desire to experiment, the fact that they look cool, the fact that they look hip. I mean, I think the reason why this whole electronic cigarette attracted me was because when I walked into a mall and I saw these kids vaping, and I was like, I don't understand this. And then because even just walking in the mall, the Vooz stand is the most attractive thing on the face of this earth. And it actually draws you in. So I can't even imagine what it does to kids. And that the fact that they look cool, and the stress and anxiety is a big, big thing. Okay. And what Prof. Van Zyl actually discovered was that some of the kids that were part of the study were actually getting these devices from their parents, because parents believe that vaping is actually better than them doing other drugs. And that is what is going on. So we need to remember that e-cigarettes still contain harmful ingredients like your nicotine, your ultrafine particles, your heavy particles, your volatile organic compounds. And they have actually proved that these contents are harmful to health. They might not be as harmful as cigarettes, but they do pose a risk to your health. So what are the risks? The risks are that what nicotine does is that it releases a pleasure chemical, dopamine. So you inhale it and you get this rush, and it goes straight to your brain within minutes of just one puff. And that's what nicotine ends up harming the brain that controls attention and learning. So you find that kids on nicotine can barely concentrate. The ones that are vaping and addicted can barely concentrate. They can barely keep attention to what's going on, and they get addicted faster as well. because their brain risks. Part of their brain has not fully developed, and this carries on until 25. So now you have adolescents that are at risk for mood disorders, lack of impulse control, because that's what nicotine is doing to their brain. And then you have a behaviorist. So a study actually came out that actually strongly linked that anyone that vapes is actually likely to use another tobacco product like cigarettes, like smokeless tobacco, like the hubbly bubbly, your marijuana. What they discovered was that if you vape, you're 4 times more likely to start smoking cigarettes because you're looking for that high every single time. And then, of course, we have the oral effects, our field. Okay, so e-cigarettes do cause effects to your oral health, but the issue is that they're less harmful than tobacco. Okay, so where it comes, when it becomes difficult to actually pinpoint and say, this is what e-cigarettes does, is because we're dealing with people that have moved from cigarettes to e-cigarettes. So there's no definite right answer to say, okay, this is what causes, this is what vaping does to your mouth. We can't research that. Of course, in the next 10 years, we can research the kids that only started vaping and did not smoke, because there's so many confounding factors that come into play. But what they discovered is that it does cause an inflammatory process, and you will see the same manifestations that you see in smoking, you will see with vaping, because it's a similar product. It'll just be less harmful to the mouth. They did a study, and they actually discovered that they compared kids that vaped and kids that did not vape. And they discovered that the ones that did vape were more likely to report an oral defect in their mouth. So any caries, which is not really a definite answer, but it's a start. It's a start to show us that this actually causes harm. Okay, so this ad is an anti-vape ad to show exactly what goes on with kids and how it affects them when they vape.
Solid liquid gases, plasma, liquids. Now, since matter are comprised of
Headphone. Come on.
hey. Okay, that's good. What kind of music? It was fine. I don't really want to talk about it. You never want to talk about it, Trey. I said I don't want to talk about it. Wait, Trey, what are you doing?
What is going on with you?
Get out!
Listen to me.
Get out of my room! Get out of my room, okay?
Okay, it's a bit of on the extreme end, but we can't take away the fact that this is what nicotine does. It causes irritability, it causes a lot of mood swings in kids, that as much as other things can cause the same problems with kids, this is what happens with their brains when they start vaping, when they become addicted to nicotine and vaping. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to quickly do a poll. Okay, Tsepo's going to upload a poll quickly. Okay, we're going to give you about 10 seconds to answer it. I just want to see what the answers are. Okay, we're going to just give a couple of seconds for those that have not answered. Okay, Tsepo, you can share the results. Okay, that's actually interesting. Okay, so majority of you, 124, actually said you do give tobacco cessation counseling to your patients. It was about half that do you ask your patients if they vape, which is because according to the WHO, they actually say that we are the best medical professionals that are supposed to give smoking cessation to our patients. I don't think we've really added vaping. A lot of us are not as confident. That's what I actually discovered in terms of giving advice to our patients. And some will say, I just don't have time for it. I don't have time in between seeing patients to now counsel this patient to stop smoking. So we need to start adding vaping to our medical questionnaires and actually finding out what our patients are doing and informing them of what's going on. So what is our role? Okay. So we need to know the facts, okay? We need to know exactly what vaping does, and we need to know how it affects our patients, where we can help. We need to know before we start any discussion, we need to be confident on what we know. And then the second thing is that you have to ask your patients open-ended questions. And I strongly believe that we sit in a position in which I think kids are more likely to trust us and tell us the truth on whether they vape than their parents. So the questions that you can ask include, okay, but are lots of kids vaping at school? Do you vape? What do you think of vaping? Do you know how vaping can damage your health? Do you know that vaping can affect areas of your life, that the nicotine in it is addictive? Do they know that there's nicotine in their devices? I think those are the questions we need to ask, okay? And we mustn't get shocked, especially with the older generation. We like scaring people in towards not doing a bad thing. And That's one thing we need to not do, is it must be just be a conversation, a simple conversation to get them to think. Because as soon as you say, no, do not do this, that's exactly what they want to do. It's like the rebellious, even me today, if you tell me no, do not do that, I will find a way to do it just because you said no. Because a lot of us have a rebellious side to us. And just because I want to prove a point, or just because you say no. Okay, so we need to be able to have those open-ended questions with our patients. Take that time when you do your medical history, when you speak to your patient about how you build the rapport, include it into discussing this. Then the third thing is that we need to talk to them about the immediate and long-term health facts, and not just, it'll kill you, those straightforward statements, but actually telling them that this is how it affects you, that this is what the nicotine does to you, that immediately this is what you feel. In the long term, this is how it's going to affect you. Because the thing is with e-cigarettes is that they haven't been on the market for long enough. So we actually are not aware of the long-term health effects. Okay, so I always say, I don't want my kid to be the guinea pig. I don't want them to be. I don't want them to be the one that the tobacco companies use as an example to see exactly what happens 20 years down the line, because that's what happened with smoking. Smoking started off as this cool thing that you could do anywhere and everywhere because no one knew the effects, and then people started dying, and then people woke up. So I think we don't want to get to the 2-year, 20-year, 25-year, 30 and say, oh, we made a mistake. This was the biggest public health mistake we ever made, was letting them come out as consumer products, because that is what they are. They are consumer products, which is why you can buy them anyway, as if you're buying a sweet. Okay, so this is a very controversial topic, the most controversial topic, because you have two sides to the coin. Okay, you have the side that says no, stop smoking. This has become an epidemic among teenagers, especially in the past decade. I mean, they even termed it the silent epidemic, because that's how many kids are vaping. We have countries that are starting to ban flavors. I mean, Juul was a hot thing in 2015, 2016, and now they're down in the drain because they marketed to kids, and they have been sued left, right, and center, and have paid about $500 million just in damages, because they have caused a problem in certain countries. You see Australia is coming up with the legislative that says, okay, so let's try keep the vapes, but also let's ban them from selling everywhere. Only certain places can sell them. So countries are now sitting and realizing that this is an issue, and we need to stop kids from picking them up. Because at the end of the day, kids are using these things. I mean, there was a tobacco addiction has started to rise when it was declining, due to people who had stopped smoking, and then the vapes came out, and it's like we took 20 steps back in terms of people not using nicotine. And then we also had the anti-vaping campaigns that are the video I showed you, which is extreme. But we've got one side that says, no, these things are not great. And then on the other side, where you have the vaping saved my life, the adult smokers that say, listen, if it wasn't for this thing, I would be dead. I would be down in a grave somewhere because I was addicted to cigarettes. And this helped me quit. Okay. And they use it to quit. You have a reduction in the number of people that smoke in certain countries. So it's a very controversial topic in terms of there are two sides to the coin. But we also have to look at, okay, but what's going on with our children? We've created a new generation of addicts, have we not? Because just because we said we found that one thing that people can use to quit smoking, this is the greatest thing, and forgetting that the upcoming generation this is what they're addicted to now. What are they going to be like in the next 10 to 20 years if this is what they are when they're 6, when they're 7, when they're 15? What type of generation are we producing, and is it necessary? So at the end of the day, you need to get the information as oral health professionals, and we need to share it with our patients, because it starts with one conversation. South Africa hasn't gotten to the point of having health campaigns to stop this from happening, because we're still discovering exactly what is going on. As I said, Prof. Vencel has not published his results, and that is one of the first studies that has been conducted on what is going on in this country and how it is affecting our kids. And my hope is that as oral health professionals, we can come together, and even if it's just teaching that one patient that, listen, this is what's going on. And a lot of the times we take a step back because you don't want to judge your patient. You don't want to judge your patient. You don't want to lose a patient. But we need to take that step in terms of telling our patients that these things are not great, and we need to be aware that they still pose a risk to your health. They still can harm you. And that's what vaping does. And I really, really believe that now is the time to include it in our health assessments, to include it in public health, inform people that this is what's going on. What you see on TikTok, what you see on social media, it might seem glamorized, it might seem the most amazing thing ever, but it's got risks. And you might not see the risks now, but this is what's going on. Okay, we've had deaths from vaping. We've had lung injuries from vaping. And to me, I think we've just swapped one evil for another evil, because 20 years down the line, we're really going to see exactly what e-cigarettes do to health. And that is it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for that informative lecture. Yeah, e-cigarette is a new territory, and we definitely need to inform ourselves even more in order to help our patients. So we will be moving over to some questions. If there are any more questions, please feel free to just type them on the Q&A section. So I'll just start with the first one. On what age group were the studies conducted in America?
So they started the studies from your 9-year-olds to about 17-year-olds. So they actually have the biggest studies globally. America actually has more articles out on what is going on with vaping. So a lot of the countries are learning from America, but you also have to consider that geographically what is going on, because when America first came out with these studies, UK, Europe was saying, no, we're not the same. No, we have only got about 11, but about 4% using teens using e-cigarettes. That's what was going on when they first came out. And now the UK is realizing, okay, we actually have a real big problem. So it ranges between 9. The PAT study goes on from they take from 11 to 17. So there's a lot of studies in America on it.
So it really snuck in, and
yes, it snuck
really
in.
blindsided us.
It did, because
and it was very interesting.
Yeah, you think of the UK. UK recently, BBC actually had it on the news where a young kid, as young as she's 12 now, but she was explaining how she started vaping at 6 because her brother put the device and they started vaping. So kids are starting to vape at a young age, from as young as 6. And for me, that's one of the saddest things ever, because she literally explained how addicted she was to these things. Like, she would hide it in the carpet. She was vaping a 5,000 puff vape in 2 days. That's how addicted she was, until her lung crashed. And she wanted to tell the world that this thing it's not for you. So those are the
Very
type of
interesting.
situations we're dealing with.
And then we have another question. There are nicotine-free devices. Except for the nicotine side effects, what are the other harmful effects that e-cigarettes have? Is there sugar in the flavored devices?
There's no sugar,
Mm.
no sugar at all. So they have an acetate, which is like your engine freeze. As I said, your ultrafine particles, you have metals in there. So they haven't been able to definitively say that they cause harm, the other ultrafine particles in the studies, because right now the studies that they have are only in vitro. And as we know, there are other confounding factors that play a role in all of this. What they can say is that they do pose a risk. They do increase cytokine production. So you have an inflammatory response. So that's one of the things that they can definitely say. So studies are still going on. And as I said, it's difficult. It's difficult to pinpoint and say this is what vaping causes, because the people that are on them were previous smokers. So we can't rule out that maybe this was caused by cigarette, and because the other products as well. And interesting, you say that there's some non-nicotine. They actually did a study in America where they took thousands, like it was a very big study, and they went and they actually opened up the vapes, a lot of the vapes, and they discovered that over 80, the ones that said no nicotine in them, and they discovered that over 90% of them had nicotine. So as much as they will advertise zero nicotine, they can still have nicotine in them.
I think Doctor touched on this in our conversation now, but another question is, wouldn't the side effect of smoking and vaping be the same, as they both have nicotine? So would you...
Yeah, it would be the same. Okay, so this is where there's a bit of the arguments now lie. Is because with your devices, you can get different nicotine strains, unlike a cigarette. Because remember, one cigarette, they actually say that one cigarette produces about 1 milligram of nicotine. Okay, and in a pack of 20, you should get about 20 milligrams of nicotine. Now, with your vapes, how they advertise it is that they advertise it in terms of percentages or milligrams. So the highest is your 5%, which is your 50 milligrams. But what people forget is that it's a 50 milligram per milliliter. So if you have a device that takes 3 millimeters, that device basically means when you finish that liquid, you have ingested about 150 milligrams of nicotine. That's what they say. And the people that do the vape tricks, those devices actually have a big amount of, which is why they produced a lot of smoke. That's how they created them. So for me, I always look at it and say, but you're still, depending on how often you go through the liquid or how often you go through the device, I think you could be on the same wavelength as someone who's smoking normal cigarettes, or even worse, because the concentration is, you can get concentration that are much, much, much more than your normal pack of cigarettes.
Yeah, and as we spoke about sneaking in, we have a question from Ahmed. Do you think the tobacco companies saw a drop in cigarette sales worldwide, and they are secretly behind this vape pandemic to hook the next generations that may not like cigarettes, that have may not like cigarettes?
Wow. So what actually happened is that the tobacco companies actually own majority of the vape companies. So what they did was that they saw a market that's open and they said, why not? So a lot of the big tobacco companies own the big brands. And yes, they have accused them of targeting kids, because I mean, if you have someone addicted to nicotine at the age of 15, you have a lifelong client. You have a lifelong, and I mean, if you look at those devices, I always call them, they're like iPhones. Okay, I mean, a device will come out almost every single month, and it's the new next fancy thing. So you go get a device. So they really are making a killing from this. They really are, because
Yeah,
now
being
they have a
innovative.
yes, they have a new
Yeah.
target market, and they're much younger, and they're much more. I mean, you don't even have to do a lot of marketing because TikTok will do it for you. I mean, you just need one
Yes.
person to vape, show it on TikTok, because it's that generation that wants to show a video
Yeah.
of everything that they do. They've already marketed. So I see a video on
Yes.
TikTok, I just go on to Take a Lot, whatever device it is, I put it in, Take a Lot will sell it. So
Yeah.
that's how it works.
Yes. And also, are public health organizations doing any anti-vaping campaigns like they do for cigarettes, highlighting vasoconstriction effects of nicotine on the general health?
At the moment, I don't know if there is a campaign on it. They still, I don't know if they've added it to their smoking campaigns as well. I have not seen anything. So this is something that we're still, because remember, the bill hasn't been passed. The bill against vaping has not been passed. So it's not something you can add to public health until they've put a ban on it. That's the reality. I think also as Prof. Benzel actually publishes his research, I think we'll see then public health will be able to now say, but listen, this is what's going on. We need to add it. Because you can't add something to public health until you have the evidence. And that's how it works. So as more research is being done in South Africa, I think we'll see the public health now coming into play and saying, listen, let's add it to our campaigns.
Okay. Are there any vaping liquids that are in the form of dangerous drugs? Maybe a mixture of dangerous drugs in the vaping liquids?
They can put cannabis. You can put marijuana. You do get like Vape King sells cannabis ones. So you do get that. And some people can actually use their devices, especially the more expensive ones, the ones with the coils and the pads. You can actually put marijuana in it and burn it and smoke it like that. So it's also a way to smoke marijuana is using your vape device, depending on the device itself. So yes, you do get them.
And I'm seeing a comment and question from Minette saying, I see a lot of demineralized enamel in patients that vape. Are there any clinical research results on that?
No, as I said, you can't have definite answers towards that, because I mean, sugar can cause demineralization. So because we're dealing with a lot of confounding factors, they can't say this is what vaping does to your teeth. So what they do say is that the people that vape are more likely to self-report, or are more likely after we examine them that we see demineralization. They can't say this is what vaping does, because a lot of things can cause demineralization.
Yeah. And also with this question, I think Dr. touched on it as well. If there are any regulations in place for e-cigarettes specifically.
No. Okay. I always say, so when e-cigarettes, fun factor, when they first entered the market in 2018, they came onto the market. What they actually, it could be less, I could be wrong. What they actually discovered was that e-cigarettes were basically controlled under the medical act, which means basically e-cigarettes you're supposed to get a prescription. It's a medicine because it falls under the Nicotine Act. So you weren't supposed to be able to see them in the shops. You weren't supposed to be able to see them where you see them now. You were actually supposed to go to the doctor, tell your doctor that I want to stop smoking, and then they write you a prescription. But that's not what happened.
Okay.
They came, no one knew what they were, and the companies took advantage of that. So which is why now they're trying to pass out this bill to say we need to control what's going on now.
Yeah. And then also a question, just comparing with smoking, would we say that vaping is more addictive than smoking?
Yes. So when we say vaping is more addictive, it's because kids are the ones that are doing it. Okay, so you find because of the amount of nicotine in the vapes, okay, so their young brains are exposed more. So they're more likely, because their brains haven't developed up to the age of 25, they're more likely to pick up this habit. So every time they start vaping, they're quicker to pick up the habit than an older patient, just because of the effect that nicotine has on their brain. So which is why it's more addictive in terms of that than because the kid is not. Cigarettes to kids is like this thing that causes cancer. They look at it as unattractive. The smoke doesn't smell nice, so they're less likely to pick up a cigarette.
Yeah. Okay, is there a sin tax on e-cigarettes, just like there is on cigarettes? Yeah.
Yes, they did. They imposed a tax this year. And mid-year they did, so which is why they all went up. So they do have a tax. Before they didn't, but now they did. It was one way of showing, I could say, good faith that we are seeing that there is a problem. So this year they did tax them. Yeah.
And then another question: are e-cigarettes more common in the high socioeconomic status? In those levels of income.
Well, right now, as I said, in South Africa, we don't know because there's no study of it. That's the reality. So it would be interesting to see in terms of going to the different socioeconomic areas and seeing if this is actually a thing. Because there's no research. We have very limited research in this country. But as you can see, it is affordable. So it could actually be they could be actually buying their vapes and actually smoking. So it is a possibility.
Also, how would one deal with a child that has shared that they are vaping, but the parents are not aware of it?
I think it's about counseling the kid and explaining to them so that they know the facts. Because I mean, if you go on to any social media, it's a positive. They show you a positive impact that vaping has. Okay. On TikTok, they recently started showing these anti-vaping campaigns, and just talking to them and building that rapport and saying, listen, and finding out where they are. Are they addicted? Are they, how often have they? Because because the reality is that if this kid is addicted, you're going to have to get the parents involved. You're going to have to see, because the factors that play a role is, are their parents also vaping? Because that plays a huge role, because them seeing their parents vaping and them, they think it's fine because it smells nice. So this is it's just speaking to them, carrying on that conversation and saying, you know what, you can get help. You know what, you can stop. That we advise you to stop, because ultimately you need to counsel this patient and walk them through this journey and advise them. And that's what we need to do as oral health professionals.
Yes, and also, does the use of CBD products increase the risk of vaping?
Well, if you, it depends. I think it depends on the user. I mean, because I think they give you two different highs. That's the reality. Marijuana gives you two different highs. So it would depend on exactly what they are looking for, the type of high that they are looking for. Okay. With the vape, it's not as prolonged as with marijuana. So it will actually depend on the type of high that they're looking for. So normally, as we said, is that if someone starts one product, they're more likely to try another one. And that's how it works.
Thanks, Doc. Just to answer that question quickly about the registration form, we will post the registration form at the end of the webinar. And then also there are are there any studies of the thermal dynamics of the electric device versus traditional cigarettes on the oral mucosa, or do they create about the same amount of heat in the mouth and on the lips?
Well, the studies that are there actually are more of the vapes blowing up in people's faces and causing injuries. So a faulty device. Those are most of the studies because that's what they've discovered. It's very, all the studies that they have is in vitro, and there's no definite answer to that. I think give it the next 5 to 10 years, I'm sure that more studies will come out on that.
Yeah. And does vaping cause popcorn lungs?
According to research, yes. Especially in kids. It does. They recently brought it out I saw an article about a week ago that showed that vaping does cause popcorn lung. But remember, with these articles, you're gonna have the lobbyists that come in and say no, it doesn't. You're gonna have another article that comes in that says no, but we did a test and this is what we found, and this. So there's always conflicting research. That's how research works. So there are cases in which they have proven that it can cause popcorn lung.
Okay. And also, I think this is the last one. Are there any litigations for children who are found vaping at schools or public places?
Oh, so what I did last year, I went to the schools. I went to the private schools, and it was just a general conversations with their principals, and I asked them, "Are your kids vaping?" And funny thing is that all of the ones I went to would open up a drawer and say, "Come look what I found." So what they're doing for now is that they're confiscating them.
Okay.
That's what they're doing in terms of in schools. They're confiscating them and punishing the students. In public places at the moment, they are using them in an open. So in a restaurant, they will sit in the open and vape. So I wouldn't say it's something new. I think South Africa is still realizing what's going on, but it's something new, because in America they've just discovered that the secondhand smoke affects people. So it's something very, very new in this country.
And I'm sure it's not easy for the schools with, as you showed us, how dynamic these e-cigarettes can look like highlighters and flash drives. Yeah.
No, it's not. It's something that they're really struggling with, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle. Because as I said, a lot of the kids will come and say, "No, but my mom and dad gave me this. Why can't I use it?" And that's how they deal with the anxiety. And they believe that this is better than picking up cocaine or fentanyl. That's what they believe. So it's the schools are struggling in terms of how do we manage it, and a lot of them are probably treating it as if it's a cigarette. Okay, we confiscate, we punish. I don't think anyone would get expelled for smoking, but that's how they're handling it.
Okay, thank you so much, Doctor, for that informative lecture. And it definitely opens up a door for further research and studies, because we really need to know more about it, be more aware, ask the right questions when we're doing our clinical and medical histories. So thank you so much for this lecture. And I'd also like to thank everyone for joining our webinar, and for SAADA. Just a huge thank you to SAADA for the partnership and the platform. And also, we encourage everyone to join the South African Association of Pediatric Dentistry, as we've been making so many strides this year, such as representing South Africa in the SAAPD Congress in the Netherlands and winning awards for our outreaches. Also, we got our first mobile truck, which was launched this year. Literally, it was launched now in Diepsloot. And we've been conducting a lot of outreaches this year. Many more outreaches are coming. And we are also discussing pediatric cases. So I really encourage us all to join. You can also just hear hear more about the association on our platforms. I will just copy a link where you can, and I will send it on the chat. Sorry. Yeah, I'm just trying to load the link. Okay, some technical difficulties. If I can just get help there behind the scenes from SAAPD. But yes, we just want to encourage you. Check our social platforms, hear about it, and you can also feel free to direct message us on our platforms to hear more about how to register and become part of the SAAPD. So we are wrapping it up for tonight, and I would just like to thank everyone again. Have a great evening, and the register will be posted in a few. So please don't forget to sign the register and also just to do the evaluation. Thank you so much to everyone.